Good Friday morning, the 30th week. This interesting gospel is in St. Luke again, okay? But I'm just share a thought with you, okay? If I sound like I'm grinding the axe about, I mean, the church experienced the spirituality of the 40s and the 50s, and I'm thinking that we're older. I'm old. I'm in my 80s, and I would think a vast majority of people who are watching these videos are my age, okay? I may be wrong, but I think so. And so we share a common history of spirituality. And I don't see that spirituality as a wholesome spirituality at all. I think it suffered greatly. And that's why if I beat the axe on it, if I beat the drum on that, it's because of it. I think we live in a much richer age of Catholic Christian spirituality than the 40s and the 50s, the rigorism of the 40s and the legalism and the rigorism, which was massive. Maybe not out here in the Midwest. I didn't see it when I came here in 71. I noticed it was different. But up along the East Coast, where I grew up, I came out here. I was 30 years old when I came out here. So I had all my Christian and Catholic experience goes back to that time. But when I come out here, I saw something different. I didn't see the scrupulosity and the kind of dualism, soul-body dualism that I saw in the East Coast. To be completely blunt, here the influence was German Catholicism. On the East Coast from Boston to Washington, in many ways, it was, of course, highly diverse, but there was a dominant spirituality, which was Irish Jansenism, to be blunt about it, Irish Jansenism. And it was very, very dualistic and harsh on the matters of the body, sexuality, etc., high scrupulosity, a very dark vision of the Christian life. And I saw that. And where I really learned its flaws was in the monastery. There, even though it wasn't individually Irish, Italians, or Germans, it was a spirituality that in the monastery, you'd think it would be reinforced. It was rejected. I'm so grateful for my passionist vocation because of a lot of reasons, but one was it freed me from that kind of Jansenism that was so pervasive on the East Coast. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was then. And it wasn't, I don't know if you're from out here, you may not have even experienced, but it was a preaching of fear, an intense preaching of fear, sin at almost every turn. And some things when you look were just so trivial, and yet they were given such enormous weight. Our confession lines were long every Saturday. What were we confessing? Well, I said 3 dirty words. I got mad at my mother. I got mad at this. But, and I don't want to take away from that, but there was, the human condition was turned into a moral monstrosity by this kind of radical Jansenism, where it saw everything as dark and condemned instead of beautiful and good, and finite and flawed, but in the end, beautiful and good. See, now watch this. This is the gospel, okay? Now that I shut my mouth off. On a Sabbath, Jesus went to dine. Now, it's key. It's on the Sabbath at the home of one of the Pharisees, a leading Pharisee. The guy's a sharp cookie. And the people were observing him carefully. What's he going to do on the Sabbath? In front of him, there was a man suffering from dropsy. Jesus spoke to the scholars of the law and the Pharisees in reply, asking, is it lawful to cure on the Sabbath or not? They kept silent. So he took the man and, after he had healed him, dismissed him. Then he said to them, who among you, if your son or ox falls into a cistern, would not immediately pull him out on the Sabbath day? They were unable to answer his question. Luke is really short and brief on that, okay? See? Come on, he's saying, come on. Is he knocking the Sabbath? No. Why would he be eating in their homes? The Pharisees, okay? These were the good guys. They were the good guys, okay? The Pharisees, the scribes, these were the leading people of their time in terms of interpretation of the law. The law is sacred to the Jews. It's sacred. It was given to Moses and it expounded over the centuries. And these were the great intellectual leaders of the Jewish people vis-a-vis the law. They're not the bad guys. They're the good guys. And yet, because the law as such can be observed beyond its spirit. In other words, without its spirit, but only in its legal structure. And that's what he's getting at here. See? Legally, you can't pull your kid out of the cistern. Legally. Morally, you better. You get it? See? Or get the ox out of there as well. You see? That the moral order, while it depends, especially as a Jew, on the law, it goes beyond it as well. How one sees it, how one interprets it. I bet he drove those guys nuts. I bet Christ drove them nuts. Because they were the reformers, they were the good guys. And he's saying, well, yeah, but you might be too good and not good enough. You're not seeing what the law really exists for. You're getting lost in the detail. And I thought that was the truth of the times when I grew up as a kid. We had so many legalistic approaches to morality. So many. God, Lord. That's why I say going to confession. Imagine you lined up in fear because you said bad words. Okay, and I'm not saying you should be a foul mouth like me, but you know what? Come on. Let's go. Come on. Look at the world. Look at what it really matters. See, what does matter? Getting to church before communion. We had it worked out. Why was it only a venial sin versus a mortal sin? I think it had to do with the offertory. I'm not sure. I can't remember anymore. I don't want to remember. But if you came in late, but before the offertory was a venial, if you come in after our offertory, you have a mortal sin. Think about that. Now, grant you, they were trying to get people to show up in church. But why so legalistically? Well, maybe it's the only way you could shape a person's conscience at that time. Rather than say we are called by our Christian faith and by our humanity to worship the divine. We come because we ought to worship. See, not out of fear, but out of loving duty to the divine. Loving duty to the divine. As you come home for dinner and you share the table with your family, so you share the table with the church. Out of your heart, not out of fear. See, I look back at that time as, no wonder we lost so many people afterwards. Some people blame the council. I don't blame the council. I think it was a rejection of that narrow Catholicism, that narrow Christianity, but especially narrow Catholicism, legalistic, very fiercely legalistic. You know, and I would just give you this historically. When in the priesthood, in the preparation for the priesthood, this is many, many years ago, half a century ago or more, much more, they trained us in, the teachers who taught us the sacrament of penance, taught it by canon lawyers to prepare us for the confessional. In other words, we were prepared for the confessional by canon lawyers, not by theologians or pastors. There was a reason. It was set up canonically. What's a mortal sin? What's a venial sin? What's a proper penance? How do you confess it all? It's all the mechanics that go into confession by lawyers. Where was the compassion of Christ ever taught? Yeah, where? Where's the compassion of Christ? When he talks to the sinners, he's saying, now, how many times did you do that? Yeah, what were you doing? See? He doesn't say, come here. You say, come on, walk with me. You see? Anyway, I have to say, I'm glad that era is over. I think finally we're looking at Christ and not a book of laws. We're looking at Christ. And we're trying to find Christ in each other, in the world, in the church. I think we live in a great age, to be completely blunt about it. I think we're in the greatest age, in my opinion, my 2 cents worth, since the apostolic age. And the reason is we have finally broke loose of Eurocentrism. We are now a global religion. A global religion. We're going to hear multiple voices, and they will come through how the gospel is seen, heard, and preached. We're living in a great age, but we had to, in a way, bring to conclusion the Eurocentrism and the canonical approach that was so strong, and it worked, but it also perverted. I think we live in a great age right now.